This is the demo for the sandballs concept which I was supposed to recreate. So how I've gone about it is I'm using the marching square algorithm to create a sort of perfectly subdivided mesh, and then I'm moving some points on the mesh backwards and forwards. So over here you should be able to see that I have these squares, and then I've pushed some of them in, and then I've used a subdivision. So if you use Blender, you'll know it as subdivision surface. If you use 3ds, then you'll know it as turbo smooth. Basically, the generic term is the Kalman-Clark smoothing algorithm to make it sort of smooth, and that allows me to move the balls towards the goal. As of now, it just deletes them. I can show you this. Some of the levels in the demo in the game which was shown had these sort of blockers, so I've implemented those as well. Yeah, so those were working perfectly. And this is not my main CPU, actually. This is an i3 which I'm running this on, which is why I'm having a little bit of stutter. So over here I've kept my stats running, so you can see my CPU spikes when I'm doing some small sort of geometry changes, basically updating the geometry. Now if I was shipping this product, I would not be using my marching squares algorithm. I'd be using marching cubes, but given that I was under a time constraint, I decided against it because it takes a really long time to tabulate all those triangles. Despite the fact that it's a temporary sort of just a demo work, I try to make it as modular as possible. So this would be what is classified as the medium quality PC graphics, where it's using the Kalman-Clark. But if I lower the Kalman-Clark subdivisions down to 0, then you can see that it gets a bit blockier, but it runs much smoother. So now if you look at the CPU load, it's 11 milliseconds, and even when I start sort of changing geometry, large amounts of geometry, it remains stuck at that 19 milliseconds. I'm able to hit the 60 FPS target at all times in sort of low performance zero subdivision mode. In fact, that can also allow me to crank up the number of squares, and that'll effectively sort of mimic a higher resolution. Okay, let me just bring the camera in. There we go. So I can see that the gradient is much sort of smoother. I'm not 1080p. Yeah, so you can see it's much smoother, and I'm able to remove sort of geometry a bit. I'm able to have a higher resolution while not subdividing. So I've tried to keep it as modular as possible, where you can choose to have either a higher resolution with no subdivisions or a lower resolution with higher subdivisions. So just for reference, I'll quickly go back to the one subdivision 20 by 20. So you can see it's running fairly smooth while still being completely dynamic and completely sort of user editable. In fact, this can also be extended. So if I were to raise the scale to 2 and maybe raise this to, let's say, 25, it's a lot more, it's a much larger area, and it's running at a decent frame rate despite the size. In fact, because I have split off the width and height, if you were playing this on, say, a phone, I could throw the width to 10 and the height to actually let's just do 9, 16, and okay, let's throw this on phone full HD. And now you can see that this is actually in a phone's aspect ratio, and it's running perfectly smooth. You can see I'm running at 12 milliseconds on the CPU, and it jumps up to a maximum of 28. But again, that is not sustained CPU load. That's kind of a burst, which would be fine on a phone because they usually have really good turbo boosting. So I'll show the geometry deformation. So this is a better look at how the geometry is deforming. One moment. Selection wire is on. Yeah, there we go. So you can see the wireframe dynamically updating to reflect the user input. And that is my recreation of sandballs, as well as my explanation of how I went about it. And yeah, so yeah, thank you.